done Unreal on the show a few times before and talked about how we're going to show things as we learn them, and that's going to be happening again next Thursday. We're doing another virtual production setup, but this time instead of a projector, we're doing green screen so we can more organically put our actor inside of a virtual environment, which is an environment that was supplied to us by the amazingly talented people from Rebellion. They're incredible artists. They made this awesome environment for us to use for this. We're using the HTC Vive to track everything. There's a lot involved, and it's been a lot of fun to figure out, but we're gonna get into all of that next week. And if you want a sneak peek at what the shot's gonna look like, check out my Instagram. I posted a few frame grabs there. But today we're talking about the latest Marvel spectacle that is out in theaters right now, which of course is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And the trailer is full of amazing mind-bending shots, but the one that stuck in our minds was this one here. I love the Silent Hill mixed with Inception vibe that it has, so naturally we had to try it for ourselves. If we take a look at the main elements of these shots, we have buildings breaking into pieces and slowly floating up, sometimes large buildings floating in surreal angles, these weird inky tendril things, and an overall foggy, dust-filled environment. For our version, we also wanted it to be set in a city, so for this we used free stock elements. Our main city street is from Unsplash, and both the clock tower and sky background footage are from pexels.com, all linked in the notes below. So to start, we created a new comp in Adobe After Effects with the city image and duplicated it. On the bottom layer, we used the pen tool and drew a mask around the buildings. For the framing of our shot, we wanted to get rid of the left tall building and for the right one to be a lot shorter, so we masked it off about halfway. This next step isn't necessary, but we wanted this smaller building to be breaking up separately, so we masked around this one on the top layer to isolate it. Double-clicking the bottom layer, we'll use the clone stamp tool to erase this building. Depending on your city layout and how much control you want, you could isolate each individual building, but we opted to keep the rest together as one layer. For the breaking up animation, we're going to be using the Shatter effect, and that can be pretty slow for rendering, and this image is very large, so after hours of rendering, we opted to actually decrease the city size by dropping it into a new comp, and in comp settings, we'll change the name and lower the comp width to 1920. But we're going to keep it tall for now, since in the final shot, we're going to want space to tilt the camera up. Now, right-click the layer, go to Transform and Fit to Comp. Then pre-comp again, moving all attributes to effectively lock this new scale, and we'll rename this layer to Shatter 1. The Shatter effect basically breaks a layer up into pieces. You can control the shape, scale, gravity, and so on to really customize it. For example, if we want this section of building to break up, under Force 1, we can move the position to this section and lower the radius and strength. And under Shape, increase repetitions to closer match the building scale. Direction controls rotation and extrusion depth in the thickness of the segments. We have more controls under Physics where we can lower the gravity and change the direction to make them float upwards, as well as other settings to help vary and randomize the look. If you keyframe the radius to increase over time, it will expand and have new segments emit at different times. While there are some shapes which could work, such as bricks or glass, we'll be taking a page from this great Shatter tutorial by Plug and Play and create custom shape and map layers to drive the effect. To start, create a new solid layer for our shape map and add a fractal noise effect. Change the fractal type to dynamic and noise to block. Next, add the colorama effect, and under output cycle, we will change the position of some of these colors as well as adding black. Then you can add a turbulent displace. With low scale and increased amount and complexity to break up the linear look of the block fractals. Hide this layer, and in the Shatter effect for the shape pattern, choose Custom, select our solid layer and change to Effects and Masks. Check white tiles fixed, lower the repetitions to 1, and we found we got better results making the extrusion depth 0. As you can see, we're already getting much more interesting results than the default shapes. Moving the origin point around and increasing the force radius along can bring a lot of interesting results as well, and you could change the fractal noise scale and multiple other values to alter the look of these particles further. Tweaking some Shatter settings here, it's quick to get an interesting look. If you happen to get any glitches like this, which took us an embarrassingly long time to realize what was causing it, it turns out all we had to do was read the obvious warning sign and make sure to change our project to 8-bit, which fixed the issue. Now, if you want to randomize different areas to gradually break up rather than just using a solid radius, you can create a gradient map. To do this, duplicate the shape map solid, which we'll rename to gradient map, delete the colorama and turbulent displace, then reset the fractal noise. In the Shatter gradient dropdown, select the gradient map, choose effects and masks, and increase the threshold. You can see this controls how many or few segments remain based on the luminance values of the gradient map, so again, fractal scale and other settings can alter this look. You can also increase the threshold to increase over time, similar to the radius, which will make the remaining segments shatter later in the timeline. For our scene, we ended up creating multiple different versions, just altering various settings and changing the shatter placement for different areas of our building, including separate ones for the front building we isolated earlier, until we had a decent selection to come together. There's more to come, of course, but before we get to that, let's pause to thank our sponsor. Artlist has a massive catalog of great music for any project that you're working on. Anything from music you've been hearing this whole episode to any genre of chart-style music, great tracks for events, underbeds, all the way to cinematic scores for your film. You also get their unlimited license, which gives you access to everything for any platform, from social to client and commercial work to film and TV on any platform. So you can grab and go knowing you are covered for that piece. But now they also have a personal creator plan that is much cheaper and gives you license to use across all social platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and so on. And honestly, for most of us, this license will be all we need, so it's great to have that option now. And speaking of YouTube, every song is cleared through YouTube, so you know you're covered and don't have to worry about getting strikes and your video being suppressed. And one of the biggest hassles for any project is finding the right music, and Artlist has done a great job with their search to help alleviate those pains a little bit. I just toss in a keyword and I get a bunch of options that work right off the bat. They've done a solid job of curating things in the most intuitive way so you can find what you need and get to work quick. And again, you got their unlimited license, so you can download all the music that you want and experiment. We actually did an episode a few weeks ago where we showed exactly that. We grabbed a bunch of Artlist tracks, then a few scenes from some films, took out the original music from those films and replaced it with Artlist music to experiment with how much that would change the feeling of a scene. So if you need music, which we all do, check out the links below to get 2 months free with your annual subscription.
Logo.
One thing we found was we weren't able to get the shatter animation as slow as we would like, while also covering the area we wanted the way it does in these faster versions. Our way around this was to change the comp to 120 frames per second and render out our different versions with alpha. Bringing each of these renders into a new comp, we layered them up in an order we liked, and on some layers masked around sections we wanted to keep. We then changed our comp back to our original 23.976 frames per second, and we could now stretch the layer times to 500, getting that nice slow motion. With some, we even pushed it further and enabled frame blending. We also moved everything earlier in time so that it's already mid-destruction by the time the shot starts, and in the end, we have this combined version of our city. Now we're going to drop this comp into a new comp to create the rest of the city scene. For the sky, we're going to use this Pexel stock footage scaled up, rotated, and positioned to create a jarring Doctor Strange style angle, and because this is a time lapse, we slowed it down to 1000 and enabled frame blending. Most of the cold colors of the scene will be done in the final grade, but to get us halfway there, on the shatter layer, we will use a tint with 60 strength and curves effect to lower the reds and highlights and lift the shadows. We then used a curves effect on the sky footage to match. We also wanted to add a large floating building, similar to how we see this tower in Doctor Strange. So we found this free stock clip of the Palace of Culture and Science clock tower, which we thought could work really well. We'll drop this into a new comp, and it already has quite a smooth camera move, but we opted to stabilize it further around the front of the clock face by right-clicking, track and stabilize, track motion, stabilize motion, then we place the tracker over the clock face and play through the shot. Once that's done, apply, and it's time to separate it from the background. Luckily, because it's got quite a lot of blue sky, we can key it. Otherwise, we would have had to roto the whole thing. Unfortunately, Keylight didn't do very well, so we will use Red Giant's Primat Keyer from their VFX suite, which is my personal favorite keyer. This does a really great job at both keying the sky and clouds. We just used a duplicate without effects to mask the clock face, bringing back any of the areas that it keyed out due to similar colors. So with that done, we can drop this into our scene beneath the Shatter comp and scale down, flip horizontally, and change rotation and position. Now, because the footage is already rotating in 3D space around the tower, we just keyframe the position to slowly rise throughout the shot. And of course, once again, color correcting the tower to match the other layers. For some atmospheric effects, we will use assets from our own dust and energy packs. For anyone who has our Infinity Pack collection, these are already included in that. To start, we're going to use some of the dust assets with set endpoints halfway through so they begin at this frame and placed beneath the tower layer. To make it dark, we can use the Unmult preset to key out the black background, then use a tint effect set to dark gray, and with a curves effect, you can boost the alpha channel to make it more visible. We did the same for a number of both dust and energy leaks, swirls, and wisp assets placed throughout the scene and slowed them all down with frame blending enabled. In front of the tower layer, we added some more slowed down dust elements, but this time lowered the tint strength to bring them up, which helps add some depth between the tower and foreground buildings. We also placed practical dust fall beneath the small building in the Shatter comp to add some more atmospheric depth, giving us this. For the inky tendril things, we thought the best way that we could get a similar look was to use footage of slow motion paint. We were able to find some great stock footage on Envato elements, so to turn them into floating ink, first set an endpoint for where it should start. When it begins to break up, we get these cool little details, so we'll set our endpoint here. We'll drop it into the comp and mask and feather this area to remove the harsh edge, then scale, rotate, and position by the building. Next, add an extract effect, keying out the white background. Apply a tint with a dark gray color and use a curves effect to lift the shadows. To bring back some of the highlights that we've lost, you can use a camera blur effect, change the blur to 0, increase the gain, and lower the threshold. And once again, we'll slow this down even further and enable frame blending. Then we did the same using the other paint stocks placed throughout the shot, giving us this. Finally, for these ashy snow / spores, we used a few of our practical close-up particle assets set to screen and lowered the opacity. At this point, we rendered it out and dropped this render into a final comp where we'll decrease the comp height to make it 16 by 9. Then we're going to set our layer to 3D and create a camera, which we did ours at 20 millimeters. And then we're going to keyframe everything to get that slow push upward. And we're going to select both keyframes and hit F9 to ease them. If you want some handheld motion, you can alt-click the orientation stopwatch and type in an expression. We went with wiggle 0.6, 1. And the last thing we did was to use a couple adjustment layers with Red Giant's optical glow effect, and then adding a chromatic aberrations and final grade to closely match our Doctor Strange reference, and we have this. And obviously, all aspects of this process can be tweaked for a variety of different scenes, such as an alien invasion or kind of colorful glitch disintegration effect. But that is it for today. If you aren't subscribed already, consider doing that and hit the bell button so you're notified when we put up new content. And until next time, don't forget to write, shoot, edit.